What's up, everybody? TJ Schwartz here. It's the Edge and Flow podcast. What are we on? Episode 27, I think it is. And I'm here with Lucas Burnley,
What's
and
up,
he's
guys?
my co host. And we're excited to talk. I'm always excited to talk to Lucas. So it's at the beginning, it's like I'm talking to you guys, breaking the fourth wall, but then I just pivot every episode.
Yeah,
And then pretty soon I just forget we're being recorded. So,
it's the best.
yeah,
But today we are united in frustration,
that's a good way to put
right?
it.
I think that both of us got on here and I was like, what do you want to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to know what's going on. It's got that frown going.
So, it yesterday I was doing things in the shop and it occurred to me like I want to talk about this on a podcast because it happens to me every once in a while and it maybe happens to other people. And that is something goes wrong, you get frustrated, you make another poor decision, another thing goes wrong, and you get into whatever you want to call it, domino effect, you know, basically a pileup of, I guess, poor decisions and then frustration. And then eventually I get to the point where I have to step away. Um, but it wasn't anything expensive or crazy yesterday. So I was basically running handles on my Tormach, which is all G10. So it's a lot of ball end mill time. So there's not a lot of tool changes. And I get to thinking, I'm like, well, it's an hour cycle time and there's really no tool changes. I could probably service my compressor while that's running, right?
Mm.
So I get the machine started. I'll go. I'm like, I'll go buy some oil. I'll let one cycle run while I'm gone. I start the machine, make sure everything's good. Watch the first operation. Walk out the door, go get the oil, come back. The machine had stopped right when I walked out the door after that first stop because I forgot to turn off option stop, which is basically it tells the mill to stop after each like sub operation.
Mm-hmm.
And so it stopped seconds after I left and I was gone for like 45 minutes and it didn't run at all. And the vacuum was running the whole time. So there's just like this big vacuum just sitting there running for 45 minutes. So I'm like, okay, that was mildly frustrating, whatever. Start it, get it running, go to start to service the compressor. I trying to get the oil, to drain out of it and whatnot. Open, pull the oil plug. I've got the pan under it. It's like barely drizzling out and it's just taking forever. So I'm like, well, I'll prop this pan up. So you can probably get an idea of where this is going. Prop this pan up. And I'm
You
like,
had your new white sneakers on.
yeah. And I make sure I'm like, all right, the pan's in good shape. Like I'm wobbling it. I'm like, I know this is a stupid idea, but I think it's going to hold. So I let it totally drain. And then I wanted to refill it a little bit and like do a little bit more of a flush, like maybe run 10, 12 ounces of clean oil through it. And so I'm leaving the drain unplugged and I'm trying to get a funnel in the top and the angle isn't really working. And there's no funnel that really can get this angle. So I'm like using tape to make the funnel longer and smaller. And I'm like trying to pour a little bit of oil. And of course, all this is happening. I bump the pan, literally drop half of it on the floor, like on my feet, on some belts. Like it goes underneath my drill press. It's like probably 12 to 14 ounces of oil. And I'm sitting there like, oh, I'm an idiot. I knew that was going to happen. And then finally get everything, cleaned up, pull my drill press out. And long story short, it was like the frustration of one decision made me make a poor decision on the next thing. And then that frustration makes me make a subsequently poor decision. And at that point, I cleaned it up and I walked away for like 30 minutes. I just went and ate something because sometimes that helps.
Gotta walk away.
And it's like I said, it's nothing catastrophic, but that was an easy one to talk about. And I don't know if you have days like that.
Are you kidding? Before I get into my days, which I'm sure we all have days like this, I think the variations obviously are probably pretty vast. You touched on something that I think is pretty interesting, which is you knew there was a point that you hit where you knew that what you were doing was a bad idea.
Yep.
And you didn't stop.
Yep.
Okay. I would say unscientifically, I would be willing to bet that like 80% of shop accidents, you know exactly when you made the mistake. Like, you're like doing something squirrely on a drill press and you're like, oh, that's not bad. Then you keep going. And that's when you get a helicopter.
Yeah.
Or you're like pushing a little too hard on a grind And you're like, you have this split second where you think about what you're doing and then you push through it. And that's the mistake.
Yeah.
I actually think it's like a fantastic mindfulness exercise, because if you can teach yourself to listen in that split second, I think you can avoid a lot of the just accidental issues that we kind of run into. The thing that you drop, the thing that you knock off the edge of the bench, the grind that you mess up, like you getting cut, like there's like an intuition that kicks in where you're like, this is like, I don't even know if it's fully formed thought, but you feel it.
Yeah.
You get spidey sense.
Yeah. And I can tell you that's exactly the way it was. When I put that pan, I stacked 3 5-gallon buckets high, and they were stable. It was stable until I bumped it off of there when I was fudging around. But I put it on top of there, and I'm like, this is going to end badly. I mean, like you said, there was the voice in my head that's like, this is stupid.
You're like,
yeah, but it'll work.
I always wonder, like, okay, so I think it's really common in the maker sphere. Like, I think it's a common thought that you're like, oh, I knew that was going to happen. Like I was going to smash my finger, whatever it is. Does that process exist in other fields with higher stakes? And is it something that they train around? So if you are a MotoGP rider, is there a point where you're like, hey, listen, like that lean angle and like rotation or whatever is like, this doesn't feel right? Is there that split second? Like, do they train that in, or like, are you a fighter pilot or something? Because it has to happen. Like there's some kind of like human response that is like catching you in whatever you're doing, just like a little fail safe. I think we're really good at ignoring it.
Yeah.
And like bowling through.
Well, it's like the old safety phrase, see something, say something. Totally. And that's more of a group setting, but that's also for your own head. It's like there's this subconscious voice that sees it, and then the other half of your brain's like, shut up.
Yeah.
And then you keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say so. This week, my frustrations, it actually ties into our last pod, which is like this, like what is work kind of concept. Cascading time is a huge issue. So what'll happen is I will set out in the morning with a task or a group of tasks, either through my own kind of like neurodivergent brain or some outside factor. I will get distracted and like go down some type of rabbit hole, or like I'll answer a phone call, I'll answer an email, and it'll start a back and forth. And so my original timeline starts to extend. And then the timeline after that was dependent on the first timeline, that extends. And it's like not uncommon to lose like one, I feel like probably realistically, I could lose an entire day a week.
Oh, easily.
So it's different, right? But it also, when we were chatting before we turned on, I had said like the triangle of sadness, which if you guys haven't seen it as a movie, it's fantastic. But it's this weird, like for us as makers, I feel like the way I was using triangle of sadness is just this, like, you're just banging around the corners. You're circular, you're not making progress. And there's a point where you just fully have to like disconnect, reset, right?
Yeah.
And kind of like come back. When it's time, it's super hard to do because you already realize your timeline is what is the problem.
Yeah.
To walk away means that you're taking more time. But I feel like 9 times out of 10, it lets you refocus.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think maybe for me too is like trying to stack things. For example, I was trying to do maintenance, and I was like, I'm trying to do the right thing to maintain something, but keep production flowing. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe every 2 weeks or every month, I have one day where everything stops and I just do maintenance. Just sweep, change the compressor oil, whatever, change some valves.
That's kind of what I do.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot more production, so your maintenance schedule is much higher. Again, tying in, right? More product, more process, more time on the machines, more maintenance.
Yeah.
You could literally get to the point where you're producing enough that maintenance is a full-time or like
Yeah.
20-hour a week job.
Yeah.
That's a crazy thought,
For sure.
right?
Yeah.
A while back, you and I got to tour Silencer Co.
Mm-hmm.
in Salt Lake. It was amazing from a manufacturing standpoint. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was, I mean, they have equipment, they have sizable, expensive equipment that all it is doing is making maintenance easier.
Yeah.
So like, I forget what they're called, but like the for coolant, like coolant, it's basically like a coolant filtration. So like the old coolant goes into filtration units,
coolant recycling, like, basically
coolant recycling. I mean, you just see like at a volume of manufacturing, everything scales to this point where you're looking for efficiencies around just the maintenance.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Little problems become big problems.
Yeah. I'm like changing coolant on the CNC today. I went to blast stuff, realized I had a hole in my blast glove. So I changed my blast gloves. A lot of things I do on like a rotating schedule. So like I'll clean my coolant, or I will, I've got a Kaiser compressor now, so I'm not doing any service on it right now, but, not to rub it in.
You're rubbing it in.
It's really quiet though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's that. But I tend to agree with you in the sense that I think if you can batch that work, you get better end result, and it doesn't mess up your time. Cause like, at least for me, what I'll do is I'll go to change the gloves in my blast cabinet, and then I'll be like, man, I should really sweep.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, I should pick stuff up and like take it off.
Oh, my blast nozzle's going too. Yeah.
Oh, blast nozzle's going. Oh, I got to change my window cover, whatever in the blast cabinet. And it's just like, if you're doing that midstream, like today I did it midstream because I had to, like literally there was, media shooting out of my glove. But yeah, I don't know. I guess it's interesting because you ran into an error, like a physical error, and I'm running into a management error, time management error. The two things are related, but not the same. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Like breaking something, dropping something, dropping a tray of parts. That doesn't have anything to do with time, really.
Yeah. I think it does though, in some ways.
Okay.
Because I mean, I think I knew it was stupid to try to service a compressor while a CNC machine is running, that it requires air. And for people out there that are wondering how that works, like a CNC only needs air for the tool change. At least mine does. And I had like a good 45 minutes where it wasn't going to need air. And that was why this turned into like a deck of cards, or it's, a house of cards, is like the machine ended up sitting and waiting for me and all this. And I'm like, that was dumb. The time management kind of made me make poor decisions, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, trying to be more efficient.
Yeah.
But that efficiency wasn't actually effectiveness.
Yeah.
What you needed to be doing was making parts and continuing to move those parts through the process, trying to shoehorn in one maintenance task. Like there's not really like a big gain to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you're using, it's like a support machine for the machine you're running.
Yeah.
Our brains do weird things.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
What the heck?
Juggling's never good for me. And I mean, this is a callback to that episode where I said I've got like 2 ports.
Yep.
And maybe that was only 2 things, but they were two complex things to be focusing on. And again, I mean, it maybe sounds like I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, but what I'm getting to is like the way my mentality about being in the shop like collapsed in that moment when I spilled that oil. It was just, I felt like I wanted to punch a hole in the drywall kind of situation. And I'm like, I knew that was going to happen. And there's that like self-blame of like, I knew that was going to happen. And that was why I thought about bringing it up to you, is like those learning moments where you didn't listen to yourself kind of thing.
You don't listen to yourself. There's another, I think, area that you could kind of look at, which is like, it's like one of our kids having a tantrum, right? There's different inputs into why that happens. So the idea, like in our shop, I've always tried to make the point clear that like, we're never in a rush. So like when we had employees, like the goal, I was like, we're never in a rush. Yeah. Like you literally cannot rush any job. It doesn't matter if we're behind. Rushing is not the solution to fixing it.
Right.
Right. It's easy to say. It's when it's you though, it's like hard to do.
Yeah.
right? Because you're like, I can do a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
This always came into play for me around like knife shows, because I would look and I'd be like, I have enough time. I'm going to do a little bit more. And it like very rarely ever worked out. It was never actually worth it from the standpoint of like mental health or even financial. Like, what is an extra $1,000 or however much you're going to make if you're running up to the red line?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
And
because
possibly
that's when a
ruining
mistake.
$1,000 knife in the meantime.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. One more knife doesn't matter. It's like you're increasing your margin of error exponentially as you get more tired.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think we've talked about that. Like when, for a long time, like when I was just doing custom knives all day, every day, and I was doing like 6 shows a year, when I was like in full go mode, I would taper my days where I would start off with the hardest tasks. And like by the end of the day, 12 hours in, I'm either like bandsawing blanks or sweeping.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're just reducing your like cognitive load
Mm-hmm.
throughout the day.
Yeah.
So the question around you doing this is, right now, like overall, do you feel rushed, or do you feel like pinched for time or behind or anything like that?
That's a good question. Yes and no. No, in that there's not really any external things that are really putting a lot of pressure on me right now, that much. But in a way, though, I do have a tendency to put a lot of pressure on myself for like onward and upward.
Yeah.
More efficiency, like trying to over optimize. Like that's probably a personality benefit, but often flaw with the way I am.
A lot of them are.
And that's something that I come into quite a bit, is like you over optimized until you realize you compressed everything so tight that when one thing goes wrong, you're frustrated.
So that was the question,
Yeah,
is that one thing, because in reality, you spilled a little bit of oil,
right.
but you said that it started to like cascade and like kind of throw you off your game for the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the day.
Yeah, yeah.
And so to me, like when that happens to me, I realize I'm usually like overloaded.
Mm-hmm.
Something is going on where I'm just like, man, my head's not in it. Like whatever it is, that's like didn't get a good night's sleep, or I'm stressed out about something external. And to be fair, being like independent shop owner, internal, external is a very strange line, because is there even really internal or external, or is it just like one,
Yeah.
like one consciousness?
Yeah,
It's not like you like, shut off the lights at the factory and go home, like, and forget about it till the next day. Like
yeah,
they all bleed together.
yeah.
Um,
And what I did is I have like a stack of handles that's a 1 hour set, 1 hour op. And I'm like, okay, for the next 2 days, if I do 8 stacks a day, so I'll warm the spindle up in the morning, run 8 hours, shut them off. And so I had like 2 rows of 8 stacks. And I'm like, this is the next 2 days. And then I'm like, I can still stay up. And then I put it like on my whiteboard with my calendar, like, this is the production schedule. These next 2 days, this is what I'm doing. And to be honest, like, there's not this super critical deadline, but
right.
I had already put it on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, well, if I'm going to not erase things on my whiteboard, then I have to change this oil while it's running.
See,
And I'm like,
there
boom, there it is. Bad decision.
There it is.
That's
so you focused on an arbitrary deadline, which is fine. Like we need deadlines, but you got to a point where you used flawed logic to achieve an arbitrary deadline. Like
right.
it gets muddy,
Yeah,
man. Like
yeah.
we make things very difficult on ourselves.
And I think one thing I hate that I don't know if I'll ever be able to shake is, I think they call it timeline inflation. It's like if a deadline is further down the road, it'll take you all the way up to the deadline. And so it's like I like it, but I don't like it at the same time, where I'll set intermediate deadlines that are artificial.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I want to hit deadlines so that I'm not just thinking I got 3 months, I got plenty of time, and then it takes the whole 3 months,
I think an easier way to say that is a job will occupy the time you give it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. There's obviously some, criteria there that could change that. Like just because you give a job a day doesn't mean you can do it in that time,
Mm-hmm.
but almost without fail, like if you give it more time, you will utilize all that time. And they've done like studies around this with exams,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like some students will have a hard date exam. Some students can pick their own deadline. And then some students, it would be due at the end of term.
Mm-hmm.
And like without fail, cascading, the ones who just had a hard deadline got it done. The ones who set their own deadline struggled. And the ones who like pushed it to the end, like basically it was like 50% finished. And like, obviously I'm paraphrasing here and like, guessing at numbers, but that was the gist of the article.
Yeah. People pay attention to the obstacle that's the closest to them.
Yeah.
And when you have a lot of obstacles in life and things to think about, like anything that, that's 2 months away, you're going to think about it in 2 months. You're probably not going to think about it today.
It's true.
So I try to battle that.
And yeah, we all do, right? Like, but that's investing.
Yeah.
Like,
but there's times like this where it's like, I just need to be diligent about, like I said, maintenance days. That should be scheduled. It shouldn't be in the margins. You know what I mean?
Totally.
That was the real dilemma there.
Well, and that is when it comes to scheduling, it's like being a survivalist and only buying ammo and like not having a way to purify water.
Mm-hmm.
Like what we do for work, right? The work, obviously the output is the important thing, but the maintenance allows output.
Mm-hmm.
And without maintenance, you just have, disposable machinery.
Yeah.
And body and everything else.
Yeah.
So, but it's not the sexy thing to focus on. It's not sexy to be like, all right, I work better when my shop is super clean.
Yeah.
So I know that every Monday morning I'm going to come in and I'm going to do like an hour sweep and organization of my shop. We talked about that a little bit, which I think it was from whose podcast was it from where they really like dug into the idea of like why you don't clean at the end of the day.
So that's Jay Pearson. That's his philosophy.
Yeah.
But they were talking about it on the Business of Machining podcast, which is John Saunders and John Grimswell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that to me makes so much sense. That's what I've always done, because you look at it and you're like, end of day, you're tired. Your work is done. You're not feeling motivated to like make your space efficient.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you come in the next morning, it allows you not only to clean effectively and like organize, but it allows you to set your like intention for your workday.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like if there's things, usually for me, like if there's things that are outside of like that little window of cleaning every morning, I'll just write them down. Those become maintenance items. And it's funny. So today, the frustration around today has actually been that I'm getting ready to finish like a bunch of product for a drop. So I've basically just been doing production on Cypops, polys, like all the little EDC stuff. And I'm ready to be done. Right. Mm-hmm. It's just a lot of small piecework. And in that, I'm seeing all of the issues with the shop right now. I'm like, shop's disorganized. I need to build a new workbench for my, heat treating furnace, like all these little things. And in the back of my head, like I can't let go. Mm-hmm. So to me, that means that I need like a 2-day maintenance kind of deep dive.
Yeah.
Don't think about work. Don't think about working in the business. Like only think about working on the business.
Yeah. John Saunders, I believe he calls that days off in the shop. So it's like, it's a day off from work,
but you're in work,
but you're working on the shop. Yeah. I like that.
I used to call them Saturdays.
Yeah.
So I'm trying really hard not to do that anymore, but that was for years and years and years. That was always my go-to. Like Saturday was maintenance.
The margins. Yeah.
Dude. That's crazy. I mean, that's crazy. Like you look at, there's a lot of pros to being self-employed, but there's also a lot of things that we do to trick ourselves into not around like success, but like how like efficiency. I realize for myself, if I'm having to come in on a Saturday to do the maintenance that I need to do, and that's my Saturday, like there is a flaw with the way that I'm running my business for me. Like real, like we all like this stuff. I don't want to do it 7 days a week or 6 days a week.
Yeah. Sustainability is always the big question with that.
Longevity.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you, yesterday, wait, was it yesterday or today?
Yesterday that happened.
Yesterday. So in general, if you have, so say you hit that like, steam whistle point, what is the fix for you? Is there a fix?
So for me, it's usually stop, because it's like what was driving me kind of crazy is like when that oil spilled, I was close to getting it done in time for the machine to not have to stop. And then the machine stops while I'm cleaning up the oil. And that's like the trigger of like, I'm an idiot. I was trying not to let that thing stop. And now the compressor's completely empty because I'm doing all this.
Right.
And that was the moment where I was like, okay, I'm checking out. I'm not starting the machine. It's going to stay there. You know what I mean? And then I'm going to go in the house, drink a cup of coffee. Oftentimes for me, it's like if I eat something, I don't know, just like a little spike in blood sugar oftentimes kind of gets me straightened out, I guess.
Yep.
And that's usually what it is
just venue change.
And it's just like release the tethers, like the things that I'm trying to get done fast and quick, just like forget about it for 30 minutes, just walk away.
I think it's the like number one argument for just routine breaks in your work.
Yeah.
That like 10 to 15 minutes of like, stop what you're doing, look up, stretch your neck, roll your arms and walk outside.
And it's really easy with CNCs where, because you can, map out a chronologic week of what should be done at the end of the week. With handwork, it's not really that easy, but with the CNC, you could literally write it on a whiteboard. Like by Friday, I'll have this many tangs, this many handles, this many sheaths off the mill.
Yep.
And it's like, you have to, like you said, work in like, okay, if I'm going to walk away for lunch, if my cycle time is 9 minutes, I don't want to eat in 9 minutes, right? I just want to be thinking about that there is going to be some time where it's okay if the spindle isn't turning. You know what I mean? And that's very counter to like some philosophies of running a machine shop is like the spindle should always be turning, but you can't.
You're not a machine shop.
Yeah, exactly. And
you don't have employees that need to be running a spindle.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. This will be a fun one to go back and forth a little bit on, I think. As you've been running for like this past year, do you have a sense of like what percentage of your capability or capacity you are running at? Like, or another way to ask this would be, how much more put on your plate would just crash you?
That there's a little bit of nuance to that question, because the having like small kids is another kind of weight that's like on my mind.
Totally.
So it's like, if we're just talking about the business, I feel
we're talking this is, again, this goes, there's no separation. You can't separate that.
No, if it's everything just together, like not a lot more, honestly. But I look at like what I'm actually doing business wise, it doesn't seem overwhelming. Like I'm not overwhelmed. Totally. But if you add like we talked about, 2 small kids and the business, then it's like, it starts to feel like quite a bit. I mean, it's not max. I'm not like totally freaking bleeding out of my eyes, but like, 80% probably.
Okay. So we're back to that concept of maintenance, right? Mm-hmm. So that maintenance on the machines has to be done, but it's not the primary thing that you look at when you're looking at your output, but it directly affects it. Family's the exact same way, right?
Yeah.
It's not directly related to your business, but it has to be taken into account because just like anything else, there's time involved and like crazy variable time, right? So 80%. So that is, I had thought for years, I think probably between the ages of like 20 and like early 30s, I think I was running at 80% of my capacity all the time. I've tried to start moving that back with a weird theory around it. Okay. So my theory is, if I could get to a point where I'm like using 50% of my max capacity, I see a lot of ability for longevity but also durability.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The caveat to this is I know that I really like to work in high stress situations. The problem is like bringing family into it. It's not good for me on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm kind of realizing is like, honestly, like I would love to run like, and these are kind of arbitrary numbers. Like I feel like I would like to run at 30 to 50% of my max all the time. And I would like to run at 80% of my max, like 10 to 20 per 10% of the time.
Yeah.
So you have like these spikes where it's like you ramp up like the creativity and the productivity toward it's like sprinting.
Mm.
You do the thing and then you taper down the backside and you go back to a baseline.
Yeah. No, that's a good philosophy. I like that. I still, the future is something I'm still trying to work on for the company and the business. You know what I mean? It's like so many open-ended questions as far as how to structure it. You know what I mean? And
Totally.
then we've touched on this before, but I'm actually really happy with how things are going and like my level of effort. But I'm also like you're saying, you're a few steps ahead of me or more than a few
Lateral.
yeah. Well,
It's a lot. I mean, depending on how
yeah.
you're looking at it, I guess, right?
But I mean, like you could say chronologically, like in you've done
Totally.
what I've done and then seen what it looks like on the other side in a
You calling
sense.
me old?
No. No. I just mean like you started making knives when you were 19, right? I didn't start making knives until later. So
Yeah.
it's like I can't you had the experience before I did. You know what I mean?
True. But you also went, and this is why I say lateral, you went a direction out of the gate that I've actually never pursued.
Right.
Me at my most efficient is like a tenth of what you're doing.
In terms of
Right.
like numbers, like
In terms of
quantity.
numbers.
Yeah.
We just have a very different, I
Right.
think, working
Yeah.
method. Yeah, man. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting problem to have, right? Which
Yeah.
is just like the efficiency thing. Well, okay. I'm going to like go on a tangent for a second.
Right.
You and I were talking about consulting a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
which both of us do to some extent because of our time in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are you at a point with your business where you could use a consultant for the components that relate to scaling manufacturing?
I think I could, but I think a lot of people looking at what I'm doing might be thinking that I'm like targeting Benchmade or something like that. But I want to say that where I'm at right now, scaling wise, is actually pretty close to where I want to stop scaling. If
Oh,
but it's a little hard to explain, but it's like I can see about 2 or 3 pieces of equipment that would round out what I have, and then maybe one employee and a little bit bigger shop. But like, I know everyone says this, but I really am trying not to overshoot that. You know what I mean? There's always more to be had. Like if I were in a bigger shop, I'd always want an even bigger one. But where I'm at right now, I'm actually pretty close to my goals as like an overall production capacity. I think the goal for maybe after this year is not necessarily to increase capacity, but like what you said, to lower the tax on me to get
yeah,
the same amount of work done, if that
right.
makes sense.
Well, and especially where you're at right now, you're really poised to be able to do that because you are setting up processes that are teachable, scalable,
hmm
and essentially you are able to delegate,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And I,
But
right.
TJ, if that is actually the case and you delegate, then you're a manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the scale that you're at, you become a manager. That changes your days completely.
Yeah, it does.
Is that the goal?
Well, I think, if I were to hire one person and have a little bit more room in my shop to actually do that, I
Yep.
think it would be more of like, kind of like a team member, like I don't want to say assistant, but
No,
And
you should say an assistant. I think that's a
yeah, and
that would be an
yeah,
ideal scenario.
yeah, an assistant might be the best word for it. To be like, we might be doing stuff together. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I might be like running one machine while they're running the
Yes.
other machine, or like we're kind of trading places. Like I don't necessarily want it to be like they're set to these fixed tasks and I'm like
Yep.
overseeing them. It's more like just becomes a two-man team doing the same job, because I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing completely. Like all the things that I'm doing in the shop I actually enjoy, but there's things like design work that I just want to do more of. And it's just like, if even half of the jobs that I'm doing are being aided by like an assistant type role, then I'm doing more design work. And
Yep.
that is really the only missing piece of the puzzle for me kind of quote unquote scaling this.
Yep.
That's what I would probably target.
Yep. Well, and like, there's a lot of people that could speak to this point better than I can. Like, at most, we've had 3 employees,
Mm,
but there is something that I notice, which I would assume holds across many businesses, which is if you find the right first employee, the capability of that first employee might not be what you have, but it can be very, very close. The the employees that follow, ideal scenario, first employee is maybe training
yeah.
second employee,
Yeah.
but second employee is made to lighten the workload on first
Yeah.
employee.
Yeah.
So their skill set actually doesn't become as diverse. And as you trickle down, eventually you are hiring people for kind of individual tasks or like a primary function.
Hmm.
When it is you and an assistant, shop hand, assistant, like however you want to look at it. I mean, like old school apprentice, they are doing things parallel with you
Hmm.
and learning what you are doing, because it's not like you can just sit them down on one job.
Right.
So like we'll use Joe Mangifico,
Hmm.
right? Best employee. Okay. Joe, if you're listening, I miss you, buddy. He was a prime example because we were both learning as he was working. But by the end, there were so many tasks that he could do where I didn't have to have any part of that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have worked the same way second employee, third employee.
Yeah.
So it's actually, I see it as like an almost ideal scenario to where if you were able to almost always have like a right hand human,
Yeah.
and still, if you were scaling, still be able to like stack skill sets and employees.
Yeah.
That way you have like this 2-person team.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Um,
And having you're almost like at eye level with this assistant type person of like
yep,
it's like a, like you said, they're your employee, but it's just a 2-person team. And I
totally.
only mentioned that because you mentioned like being a manager, and I'm like,
Yep.
I don't think my goal would be to just delegate these things. It
Right.
would be more like we're gonna 2-man team these things.
So there's an interesting thought. Imagine this. So imagine you scale your business, and instead of hiring employees, you essentially hire teams. I mean, obviously this is like had to have been done somewhere in the history of work,
Hmm.
but like it's kind of sick. You guys could have like code names.
Yeah. Right.
Like
Right.
you just be like, all right, like whatever it is, if you had a finishing department and you're like, you have a finishing department, it's a 2-person team. That's like kind of cool sounding.
It reminds me of the Step Brothers movie where they're applying for jobs as a
Totally.
team.
Dude,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
Okay, that's my new hiring criteria.
No, that'd be cool. That'd be
I
interesting.
wonder like what businesses do that. If any of you guys listening have any context of a job that kind of starts off as a team, I guess like outside of
Fighter pilots,
emergency,
Top Gun, Maverick.
military, yeah, like I would guess those.
Yeah.
But hey, if it works in those situations, why would it not work in a shop
Yeah.
scenario?
It's like a sniper and a spotter, or
Dude,
pilot, co-pilot, or
my team would wear
yeah.
jumpsuits.
Right.
Dude,
Man, that is true. That's a great
it
point.
seems pretty fun. We're like at the point where I am desperately in need of a shop hand.
Hmm.
I just am not ready to like have an employee.
Hmm.
It's like a
It's a
difficult
game changer.
it's a hard decision to make either way, because I know the efficiency that comes from just having one extra set of hands in the finishing department, right? That's like Cypops and Popeyes and all this titanium and like blasting and tumbling and profiling and all these little things. Anodizing, that it takes off of my plate,
Mm-hmm.
but it also comes with the accountability and making it to where you have to be doing that type of output.
Yeah.
And over the last couple of years, my output has varied so much. I'm actually like very hesitant to like do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Ideal scenario for me would be like someone who likes the work and has a flexible schedule and is like cool with making like, 20 odd some dollars an hour to like come in and do, 15 or 20 hours a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the flexibility that's the problem. Like for those of us who are self-employed, like as you add employees, your flexibility diminishes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You're creating a job.
Yeah. No, and that's
job.
that's why I think having too many employees would kind of wreck my vision. Is that if I had one employee, like I would envision it in a way where, let's say I can see down the road that I'm going to take a week off. Like I'd
Yep.
love to just be, hey, you take the week off too. You know what I mean? And like,
Right.
we'll just figure that out. Like I want my business to be able to support people, to have
Right.
time off and stuff like that. And it becomes, the more you have employees wise, the harder it'd be to do that.
Until you get to a certain point of scale.
Yeah.
And so this is like this, there's this valley, right? There's you and an employee, super flexible. I bet like you and 5 employees is probably one of the hardest spots,
Mm-hmm.
because your overhead is real,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are you going to give 5 employees the week off? Are they getting paid? Because they got bills,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's a lot different than like being like, hey, yeah, one person, like I can do this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, cool, no problem. Once you go past that, I think that's where you start to probably at like our type of manufacturing, you have a foreman in place,
Yeah.
who is able to continue manufacturing and manage the troops
Mm-hmm.
in a way that allows you to like fully step away.
And honestly, no part of me wants that at all. Like, and that's where you this just started when you were asking about a consultant for scaling. And I was like, I'm always down for more input from the outside, but I'm not, if they would probably advise me in ways that would take me further than where I want to go.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, and maybe that was the wrong question. Maybe scaling is the wrong question.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Optimizing.
it is optimizing and like staying true to your vision.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, I'm getting ready to start working with a coach.
Mm.
I'm kind of excited about it.
Is it more business side, just generally?
Yeah, more business side. And I've gone through, like, over the past 3 years, I've kind of gone through this progression where I went through therapy after I went through that burnout, scenario. The therapy was awesome. And that guy did executive coaching. And so like I got a little bit of a taste of the coaching side in therapy,
mm-hmm.
right? After I kind of wrapped up with him, I started seeing another therapist kind of on a different like timeline, who did attachment therapy, different like philosophy, different practice, really, really cool. Kind of came to the end of that. And what I realized at the end was like I'm feeling very solid, but there are areas in my life that I do have questions about. A lot of those are around like the business,
mm-hmm.
goal setting, priorities. I mean, really like how to prioritize.
Oh, yeah.
It's back to that what is work thing.
Yeah.
I see so many shiny objects that like sometimes I cannot like pick a trajectory.
Yeah.
And so I just realized for myself, like I value counsel. In my life, I've been super fortunate to like, since I was a kid, like all my friends were like a decade older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were my counsel. Like I always had someone who was a little bit ahead of where I was to like bounce ideas off of. The problem is now like kind of where the business is at, I don't have that many people that I can bounce the ideas off of.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Coach.
Well, that's awesome that you're sharing that. I think that's really cool. I mean, to to go out and explore opportunities like that, coaching, therapy, and stuff. I think that's underutilized, especially in business-minded adult males. You know what I mean? And
I think it's business specific.
oh
I
yeah,
don't think in all industries it is.
hmm
I look at it as like, it's performance enhancement.
hmm
Like, if there are things that I can do, learn, see differently that give me a competitive advantage or allow me to work at a higher percentage of like my capacity,
hmm
I will gladly pay for that and take the time. And sometimes it's literally just taking the time to like sit down and like be vulnerable and ask
yeah.
yourself the questions.
No, that does sound pretty cool. That's something I would actually consider someday. I think that's you'd have to let me know how that goes
Yeah, I
and
will.
whatnot. Yeah, that's
Pretty
interesting stuff.
curious. I don't know.
And I can also say, man, like you talked about bouncing stuff on off of other people, you know, in previous years and stuff. And I can say you've just being around you for the because we've known each other for a long time, but it was the last like
Yep.
2+ years that we've been talking more.
Yep.
I can honestly say that I've learned an immense amount from you, and so I just wanted to say thank you for that because
Oh yeah.
I think my business has straightened out and improved in many ways, partly because of just your influence on me. So that's
Dude,
I appreciate it.
that means a lot.
Yeah,
Likewise. That's like we're good. It's a good crossover, man.
yeah, yeah,
And now we're podcasting. So
yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah. And so yeah, if you guys listening the podcast, I mean, this is the I would say the main thing for me starting the podcast was like I know you're a wealth of knowledge, and I'm always trying to learn, you know what I mean? And like having a formality to like meeting of the minds kind of thing
Yep.
is it I mean, this does feel in some ways like therapy sometimes. You know
Yeah,
what I
it's
mean?
weird.
And it's
Well,
like,
it's just conversation.
yeah,
That's the beauty of it. It's just working through problems, discussing things that are on your mind. Like those are all super important. And they're the really easy things to let slide because we're busy.
yeah,
Put it on a schedule.
yeah. Yeah, because
Make it a
it's
product.
just like in the last
Like,
episode. I mean, we can be the best of friends and then get busy and work and not talk for three
yep.
years other than it shows.
Yep.
And then it's like we're on divergent paths and we're all making the same mistakes and not communicating about them.
Yep.
So yeah, it's I think this kind of thing is perfect. And yeah, definitely let me know how that business coaching thing goes.
Pretty curious, man. He's coming from like a really good source. So I'm always hesitant, like as much as I kind of love things around that, like self-help, big air quotes kind of area. Like I love Timothy Ferriss and like, I've followed a lot of these kind of efficiency and like, I don't know, like, 30 to 40s dudes that are talking about everything from like how to optimize your time to crypto
Yeah.
to anything else, like, or how to slow down.
Mhm.
When I actually work with somebody, like I want an introduction
Yeah.
because I don't I don't like the unknown of just like picking random people and being like, "Hey,
Yeah.
you know, can you help me?" "Yeah, I can
Yeah.
help you." Awesome,
Yeah.
you know?
For sure.
So, yeah, I'm pretty curious. It's fun too, like I love learning in general. And so this is another area that I kind of look forward to just like exploring and like being a novice at. Like
hmm
I didn't even grow up doing like competitive sports. So like the idea of coaching in a certain way is like fairly unfamiliar.
hmm
Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it does.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Guess I'll probably get like a guru next or something.
Yeah. There you go, man.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah. Get some good chakras or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
got to align them.
Yeah.
All right, man. So what do you think? Is that our conversation for the day?
Yeah, man. That I didn't know where that was going to lead because, like I
Me
said,
either.
I remembered yesterday I was having one of those frustration breakdown kind of situations, and it didn't get too out of hand. But like I don't get them all very often. I'm not really super prone to that, but sometimes they happen, and I feel like I never talk about them. And I got to thinking, I was like, that's something I should mention because if anyone out there is listening and they have those frustration breakdown moments and like how to handle them, I mean, obviously I don't know exactly what the best solution in the world is for that, but just knowing that is a reality of this kind of work,
For all of
yeah,
us.
I think is just cool to put out there.
Yeah, I would love to know. This is another one like if people that are listening to this, like if you guys have methods of dealing with this, like that type of like kind of crash frustration where you start to make multiple mistakes in a row, like what do you do? And do you, TJ, do you ever just like full like red X day? Like on your calendar, you're like, it's a Tuesday, I'm going to go and drive my truck around the hill, or like drive into Boise, or like just full on just say like, hey, I know I could be working. I know I should be working, but today I'm pulling that day.
Sometimes not. I think when it feels the best is when it's not pre-planned.
Yeah.
Is when it's like I go and I turn on like, I don't know, the spindle warm-up procedure, and I'm waiting like 30 minutes and I'm just looking at it, and then and you have that intuition of like, today's not the day.
Oh, that's the best.
Or I'll be like driving to the post office and like 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'll be like, I want to drive over to that hill right now.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go drive the Jeep for an hour. And I've had that happen. It's not super frequent. I don't feel like I need escapes from what I'm doing, but there are those moments where it's just like, you just feel this call to just kind of,
that's probably, that's like a good thing to listen to.
Yeah.
And you have the capability to do it. I am trying to do it in a more systematic manner. I used to be really, really good about it. Like pre-kids, right? I have not been good about it in the past few years. And so I'm trying to figure out like two versions of this, which is allowing some flexibility just to be like, nope, today's not the day. To be fair, the river wave has been down all winter. When I can surf, it's not a problem, because like any given day I'll be like, I'm taking off for an hour and I'm going to go surf. But I'm trying to get better about putting them on the calendar, because the thought, at least at this point, is if I do that and they're scheduled, maybe I'll take them before I really need them.
Yeah.
And like, even just like, man, sketchbook and notebook and like cafe day, like head downtown, start with coffee, roll to the library, go to lunch, have a few beers, sketch, read, that kind of stuff. Like there's just so much value. And I think that kind of like connected disconnect. You're still thinking about work. You're just not doing it at work.
I've actually been playing with this idea. You just jogged my memory, so I appreciate it. But I was thinking, so I always am posting pictures on Instagram and whatnot, but it's always like in the shop. And then I'll go on like a backpacking trip, and I'll always bring a knife and a camera thinking I'm going to take all these product photography things. And I never do, because I'm like, I get out there and I just want a complete disconnect. And the thought of like going back to thinking about Instagram just doesn't feel good. So what I was thinking about doing is maybe like once a month, I should take some product and just go like within an hour of where I live, and just like spend 3 or 4 hours just driving around. Like, that's a cool rock. Like, I'm going to put a knife on that, take a picture, and make it like a photography day. So like that red X day that you're talking about, instead of saying I'm going to go out and I'm going to go kayaking and backpacking, mountain biking, and then try to get photography in on the margins, go out on like a dedicated photography trip. But it's kind of main purpose, like you said, is to get out of the shop. And
challenge.
Yeah.
Let's both pick a day. It could be the same day or a different day, whatever. But let's before the end of the month, let's both pick a red X day. I'll do my downtown cafe day, sketchbook. You do your outdoor and photography day.
Yeah. What day? Do you want to do it right?
You want to like do it right now? Let's look at the calendar.
Let's do, and obviously it's a weekday, otherwise it doesn't really
it has to be a weekday.
Yep. So let's do February 22nd.
February, what is that?
Wednesday.
22nd. Let me see what I got.
And then that'll be before our next recording. So
I've got a meeting on the 22nd. Do any other days that week work?
21st.
21st is a Tuesday. Is that next week?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. All
right, 21st, everybody. And
21st.
So before we record next time, we're going to let you know how this went. But
all right.
Yeah, managing the mental health, like that's a thing.
Dude, it's a thing. It's maintenance. Like, didn't know that the conversation was going to go there, but like if you talk about maintenance, like kind of number one piece of equipment.
Your compressor's not the only thing that needs oil change,
Oh, Oh, there's levels to that one, but that is true.
Yeah.
If any of you guys want to do a Red X Day, we are doing the Red X Day on the 21st. You can play hooky from work.
Yeah.
Tell them that
Join
Edge and
us.
Flow Pod said it's cool.
Join us.
Join us and let us know what you guys did.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's wrap it, man.
Appreciate it, man. See ya.
Later.